On March 24th, 2025, a woman named Arielle Konig was hiking a cliffside trail in Oahu, Hawaii, with her husband, a doctor who had planned the trip to celebrate her birthday. He asked her to come to the edge for a selfie. She said no. And that refusal may have saved her life, because minutes later, her husband was on top of her, bashing her head with a jagged lava rock while she screamed for someone, anyone, to hear her. Someone did. Arielle Konig was 36 years old, a nuclear engineer who had spent more than a decade working at Westinghouse Electric in Pennsylvania before earning her MBA from the University of Pittsburgh and joining TerraPower, a next-generation nuclear energy company based in Bellevue, Washington. She was, by every measure, a woman who solved complex problems for a living, the kind of person who thought in systems, in precision, in control. And so when Arielle met Gerhardt Konig, a tall, quiet anesthesiologist who was completing his residency at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, the two of them seemed like a natural fit. Both were highly educated, both were driven, and both were building careers that most people would never fully understand. They married on September 4th, 2018, in a small ceremony at their home in Mount Lebanon, Pennsylvania, and within a few years they had two sons, Olin, born in 2019, and Viggo, born in 2022. Gerhardt was not the kind of man who drew attention. His co-workers at Maui Memorial Medical Center would later describe him as friendly and quiet. He had risen through the academic ranks at the University of Pittsburgh, assistant professor of anesthesiology and bioengineering, before the family relocated to Hawaii around 2023, where he joined an anesthesia practice in Honolulu and took shifts at the hospital on Maui. He had two older sons from a previous marriage to a woman named Jessica Patella, who had filed for divorce in 2014. On paper, Gerhardt Konig looked like a man who had started over in paradise, a doctor, a father of four, living on an island most people only dream about. But what Arielle did not fully understand until it was nearly too late was that the quiet, controlled man she had married was not the man she thought he was. In December of 2024, Gerhardt accused Arielle of having an affair, an accusation she denied. From that point forward, he began monitoring her phone, surveilling her online activity, and pressuring her in ways that Arielle would later describe in court filings as sexual coercion and assault. The couple attended therapy, both individual and together, but the man sitting across from the therapist was already planning something far beyond what any counselor could fix. Because in late March of 2025, Gerhardt Konig told Arielle he wanted to take her on a birthday trip, a weekend getaway to Oahu, just the two of them. They would stay at a hotel in Waikiki. Their two young sons, Olin and Viggo, would remain on Maui with the family's nanny. It was supposed to be a celebration. On the morning of March 24th, Gerhardt suggested they hike the Pali Puka Trail near the Nuuanu Pali Lookout, a narrow ridgeline path that climbs through dense vegetation to a summit overlooking a 1,000-foot cliff with sweeping views of the windward coast. It is one of the most beautiful and most dangerous trails in Hawaii, and so they began the hike. But as the trail narrowed and the drop-offs steepened on both sides, Arielle told Gerhardt she felt uneasy. She said she was dizzy and didn't want to continue. He went ahead briefly, then came back. He took a photograph of her standing in a tree, and then he asked her to come closer to the edge to take a selfie with him. Arielle said no. They were too close to the drop. She turned to walk back, but Gerhardt did not follow her. Instead, he grabbed her by both upper arms and began pushing her backward, toward the cliff edge. He was yelling, "Get back over there! I'm so fucking sick of you!" And in that moment, Arielle realized this was not an argument. This was an attempt on her life. She threw herself to the ground. If she had stayed on her feet, the momentum would have carried her over the edge. But the fall to the dirt only began the next phase of the attack. Because Gerhardt did not stop. He got on top of her and began wrestling with her, and then he reached into his bag and pulled out a syringe. Arielle grabbed the syringe and threw it out of his reach. She could see him holding a vial in his other hand, digging through his bag for a second syringe. He was an anesthesiologist, a doctor who puts people to sleep for a living, and he had brought the tools of his profession to a hiking trail 1,000 feet above the ocean. But that was not even the worst part, because when the syringe failed, Gerhardt picked up a rock, a jagged, softball-sized piece of lava, and he began to bash Arielle's head. He hit her approximately 10 times. He grabbed the back of her hair and smashed her face into the ground. And while he did this, Arielle screamed. She begged him to stop. She asked him to think about their children, about Olin, who was 5, and Vigo, who was 2, the 2 little boys who were back on Maui with the nanny, waiting for their parents to come home from a birthday trip. And then someone heard her. A hiker named Amanda, who had been on the trail for less than 10 minutes, heard a woman screaming, "Help! Help me!" from somewhere above her. Amanda ran toward the sound. When she reached the top, she found Arielle lying on her back with a man on top of her, a rock in his hand. When Gerhardt saw Amanda, he stopped. He got off his wife. The rock fell. Arielle looked up at Amanda and said, "He is trying to kill me. He is hitting me in the head with a rock." Amanda called 911. And Gerhardt Konig ran, but he did not get far. For the next 6 hours, police searched the dense vegetation and trails surrounding the Pali highway. Shortly after 6 in the evening, officers spotted him near Nuuanu Pali Drive. There was a brief foot chase. He was arrested without further incident. His bail was set at $5 million, and then investigators learned what had been in his bag. 3 days after the attack, Arielle returned to their home in Honolulu, Maui, and found Gerhardt's fanny pack, his medical bag, in their bedroom closet. Inside were syringes, drug vials, and propofol, the same powerful sedative that killed Michael Jackson in 2009. It is a drug that can stop a person's breathing within seconds. A retired FBI agent would later say there is virtually no legitimate reason for a doctor to carry propofol in a personal bag outside a hospital. Prosecutors alleged that Gerhardt had taken the drugs from Maui Memorial Medical Center and stored them at home, and that items similar to what Arielle found in the closet were the same ones he had tried to use on her on that trail. But the most damning piece of evidence did not come from the fanny pack, or the crime scene, or the hospital records. It came from Gerhardt Konig himself, in a phone call he made while still covered in his wife's blood. While police were on the trail treating Arielle's injuries, the broken thumb, the deep lacerations across her face and scalp, the bruising from having her head driven into volcanic rock, Gerhardt FaceTimed his adult son from his first marriage. He was observed to be covered in blood, and he said 5 words that would become the centerpiece of the prosecution's case. "I just tried to kill Ari." He then told his son he wanted to jump off the cliff and kill himself. He did neither. He hid in the vegetation for 6 hours and was caught in a foot chase on the highway below. Arielle was transported to Queen's Medical Center in Honolulu in critical condition. She required surgery for her head wounds. Nearly 2 months later, she still had a visible scar above her right eyebrow and wore a headscarf to cover where the rock had torn her scalp open. On May 6th, she filed for divorce. On May 13th, a judge denied Gerhardt bail, ruling that no amount of money could ensure the safety of his wife and children. He has remained in custody at the Oahu Community Correctional Center since his indictment on March 28th. In January of 2026, prosecutors interviewed Gerhardt's first ex-wife, Jessica Patella, about what they called past bad acts during their marriage, evidence the defense called highly inflammatory and salacious. A judge unsealed most of that testimony in February, keeping 3 paragraphs sealed. On February 18th, the judge denied 2 defense motions to dismiss the case. Jury selection is set to begin on March 9th, 2026, with the trial starting March 11th. 300 prospective jurors have been summoned. Gerhardt Konig has pleaded not guilty to attempted second-degree murder. And so Olin and Vigo, the 2 boys who stayed behind with the nanny on Maui while their parents flew to Oahu for a birthday weekend, are now in their mother's care. Arielle, the nuclear engineer who spent her career solving problems no one else could see, survived this one because she threw herself to the ground instead of letting her husband push her over a cliff. and because a stranger named Amanda, 10 minutes into her own hike, heard screaming and ran toward it instead of away. If Amanda had started her hike 15 minutes later, or if Arielle had agreed to take that selfie near the edge, this story would have a very different ending, and 2 little boys on Maui would have been told that their mother fell.